All right. Guys, welcome back. This is Eric here with Guitarsenal. And today we're going to be taking a look at a pretty unique piece of equipment, something that maybe some of you are not familiar with, you've never heard or seen or whatever, but hopefully this video will spread a little bit of light here. This is an Aracom Power Attenuator. Okay. Now, we're getting some really crunchy sounds out of the intro there. We are running a 1968 Super Reverb, completely dimed to the gills, okay? This thing is completely cranked, yet we're still at a very comfortable studio volume, and that's what power attenuators allow you to do. Now, there's a bunch of science and stuff, and I'm not going to claim to explain the science to you. However, what an attenuator basically does is it allows the speakers to still take on the full, I guess, full throttle power and response that you would get out of the cranked amplifier, but while limiting the physical amount of sound that you hear out of the amplifier. So it still allows you to get that cranked sound, but at a much more manageable volume, okay? And it's not quite like a master volume. Don't think master volume. This is kind of a completely different thing. You got to remember, like in this case, the Super Reverb is a non-master volume amp, which means to get the complete power tube soak and distortion and all that, I've got to turn the amp completely up. Well, when the amp's at an extremely high volume, it's of course 40 watts cranked, so it's completely too loud to play. Maybe for some of you it's not. I know, I mean, I can crank it here, but it does, you know, get pretty loud after a while. What the attenuator does, I've got it in the I think the C position. It allows me to get this thing down to a reasonable volume, and you still get beautiful sound out of the guitar. The amplifier still responds to you as a player in the way that you would expect a cranked amplifier to do. And in this situation, I recorded a little rhythm track there by just using the neck pickup and dialing back on the volume, and the amp would still clean up and respond to me in the way that a Super Reverb should. Now, this can be used on any amplifier. The cool thing about this Aracom is that the way this particular piece of equipment is set up is it has an input and output ohmage selection, which is really, really an awesome feature. So let's say you have an 8 ohm cabinet, and it can only take an 8 ohm signal, all right? But let's just say for whatever reason your amp is only like a 4 ohm output or whatever, and it calls for an 8 ohm load on the speaker. Well, you can actually select what the amplifier ohmage is, as well as the ohms that are coming, that are supposed to go into the speaker. So that allows this Aracom to be used with any amplifier and speaker combination that you totally wish to use it. And that was one thing that drove me to get this particular power conditioner, this particular attenuator, is because of its ability to blend in with any rig in any situation. They do come at a cost. The Aracoms are rather expensive attenuators, but you can get some beautiful sounds out of these things. If you've got a 100-watt Marshall head or a 50-watt Marshall head and you want to get a cranked sound but at a studio volume, this is definitely the unit for you. And let's say that you're a guy that likes to run a Marshall head, but you want to run it into, let's say you might want to run a 410 cabinet that might only be, let's just say 4 ohms or whatever. It wouldn't be 4 ohms, it would be like 2 ohms, because the Super Reverb is 2 ohms when you're running all 4 speakers. So I've got it currently set to the 2 ohm setting to reflect the fact that that's how much resistance we're getting out of the speakers, if that makes sense. But let's just say you have 3 different cabinets and they all sound different to you, but let's just say the ohms rating for them is different, and you've got to be able to match the ohms of those particular cabinets to what your power amp's putting out. It's perfect if you want to run Marshalls really loud in the studio or practice in the bedroom and not have to blow your eardrums out. Or if you've got an apartment studio or something, you got neighbors that try to sleep at night, you can dial this thing down ridiculously low volume, like almost so low that you can still hear the strings making noise on your electric guitar even while it's plugged in. So we're not going to attempt to dial different sounds out of this, because the thing is you guys at home aren't going to know the difference. If I get this amp back up here, It's going to sound like it's cranked to the gills. I mean, guys, that's a super reverb. Super reverbs are known for their clean overhead and their clean tone. So we're literally getting the full brunt force of a 40-watt super reverb, but at a volume that is very reasonable. I mean, the volume I'm at right now, you could play a small club gig with this amplifier and still get the big, crunchy, open, focused sound that many of you are looking for in terms of, you know, when a tube amp is jumping out, going crazy, it does magic things under the strings and really lets your fingers get on those notes in a ridiculously neat way. It still does that, but at a lower volume. Now, I could play around with these settings, but you guys at home aren't going to know the difference between a fully cranked super reverb and the signal that you're hearing right now, which is, I would say that the level of attenuation that we're at right now, we've probably dumbed it down by about 65%. So I guess it would be about like maybe a 10-watt cranked tube amp right now is about the volume we're getting. Wouldn't you say, Chad?
Yeah, probably.
Right now, maybe about a 10-watter. I mean, it's still loud, don't get me wrong, but it's not peeling the paint off the walls like it would be if you went in the other direction. So let's try to clean it up a little bit. So right now our neck pickup is on about, here's full out on the neck pickup. All right, let's clean that up and see if it'll clean up for us. Here's the volume on about 7.5 on the rhythm pickup. All right, that's the in-between position with the bridge pickup out all the way, our tone about halfway up on the bridge pickup, and tone all the way out on the neck pickup, and then again, our volume a little bit lower. Let's bring in a little bit more of the bridge pickup, and let's see how that sounds. All right. Yo. All right, bridge pickup. Sorry for the sloppy looks, guys. I'm just warming up today. It's our first video. You know, one thing I will say, the Super is known for its clean overhead. We're not getting that here. We're getting crunch and distortion, and we're driving the crap out of this amp. So I would really love to test this attenuator on a variety of different amplifiers to see what kind of juicy sounds that we can get. I know one thing, that Fender Concert sitting right over there is begging to be driven because it sounds glorious when you get it up around 6 or 7, but it's so loud that it'll blow your eardrums out. I would love to hear the Fender Concert, and that's probably something we'll do in a future video. Now, here's a couple of disadvantages to this particular setup. It is a passive attenuator, which means that there's really no, there's not like a physical voltage that is being, like you don't plug the attenuator in and then dial in sounds or something like that. There's a couple of different types of attenuation. It's a passive style of attenuation. It can be set to different modes and everything like that, but what I mean by that is it doesn't require a power supply. You know, the signal passes through the attenuator does its magic, and it does its thing. As attenuators go, one thing that I didn't really mention before, I think is important to know if you're looking into attenuators, is that most of the times attenuators are generally intended. I'm getting my words mixed up. I was trying to make a funny and I just made fun of myself, but that's okay. The intended purpose of most attenuators in terms of how they work is that they usually require a specific ohm rating in terms of how you buy that attenuator. So let's say you wanted to only attenuate a super reverb, well, you'd have to order a 2 ohm unit. That 2 ohm unit would only work, like if you ordered a THD, whoever makes those hot plates, I know you guys have seen those, Marshall, Mesa Boogie, many companies, especially that make high wattage amps, offer some form of an attenuator, and there are plenty of companies on the market that make an attenuator, but there's very few people that make an attenuator that can work with a wide variety of different input and output ohmages in terms of power, amps, and speaker combinations. So let's say you wanted to buy a normal attenuator from, let's just say, somebody like a hot plate or something. I know you guys are, if you've heard of attenuators, you've probably heard of hot plates. That's a popular brand or whatever, or that model is the hot plate. The hot plates have to be ordered with a specific ohmage rating in mind. So you'd have to order a 2, a 4, an 8, a 16, whatever ohmage rating that you would need for your particular application. Again, the Aracom is a one-trick pony that can do a wide variety of different things. Yes, it costs about 3 times as much as a normal attenuator, but it can cover all the bases that you possibly need. It's a very robust unit. They do make this particular unit in a rack mount version. This is not the rack mount version. This is just a standard, I guess you'd call it a head version. I actually purchased this attenuator from a studio that didn't have need of it anymore, but I think it's a great studio option, dare I say even live performance. If you wanted to take a super reverb to a small club and crank it to the gills, this is definitely the device for you. And it doesn't matter whether you run a super or if you run a deluxe reverb and you really want to get it at lower volumes, you can do that. Or if you're running like a Fender Bassman or a Concert or a twin reverb. A twin reverb is a 100-watt amplifier. You could take a twin reverb and you could most certainly crank it. Now, one detriment that I didn't really mention earlier, there are some updated versions of this Aracom attenuator, and with this particular unit, they do make a foot switchable option where you can switch the unit on and off in terms of the attenuation. This particular version is set and forget in terms of its function, but that is one minor detriment, is that let's say I love that cranked super reverb sound. Well, I wouldn't be able to just turn it off and then I'd have to go over and turn the volume down on the amplifier and then bypass the attenuator, which I could do, but I'd have to do it by hand, and it would take a second. I'd have to flick a switch and then turn it down to get my pretty cleans. So you're not going to get a variety of different channel switching options, let's just say in terms of what the cleans can do for you versus the higher output, unless you buy one of the Aracoms. I believe they do have a version of this out now. This is the older version, but they do have a version, I believe, that has a foot switch and gives you a couple of different options. There's like a boost function where if you want to get a little bit more volume at the attenuated level, and I believe there's even like a bypass function where you can bypass the attenuator altogether. That's something that some of you might want to look into, maybe if you were going to use an attenuator for performance. But for me, as a studio option, this is a great piece of hardware that can really serve a lot of you. And I hope you hear the just crazy crunch that we're getting out of this guitar. It really does sound, in my opinion, very nice. And I hope that it records well. I haven't really recorded this amp with the attenuator. I'm curious to see what it sounds like, and I'm trying to give you guys an idea of the kind of things it can do. You get the idea. It can definitely get some crank sounds. And remember, the Super Reverb is known for its overhead. We're definitely getting some crunch. I am not using any pedals other than the Flint from Strymon just to get a splash of reverb and, to use our trim there. But you're hearing straight amp in terms of what the distortion is. So, guys, hopefully that gives you an idea of what these attenuators can do. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the sounds. Hopefully I didn't make too many flubs. We'll see. Thank you guys for watching. We post every Monday and Friday here on Guitarsenal. Make sure that you are tuning into our videos and getting all of our videos. Make sure you click that notification bell so you get our vids. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you guys next time. Make just a little bit more racket for you. Let you guys get back to your day. All right. We're going to hit a Chase Tone secret preamp here and add it on there. See what it sounds like. All right.